Hey there! Welcome to the review for God of War 3. It's the remastered version on the PS4. And I gotta say, man, I'm really excited to talk about this one. I was looking forward to playing this one anyway, but I did not expect it to be quite as good as it was. I had loads of fun with it, and it is definitely the best in the series so far. So stick around and find out why.
Zeus! Your son has returned. I bring the destruction of Olympus!
God of War 3 picks up right where the last game left off. So if you're worried about spoilers, you can either go watch my other two reviews and find out what happened that way. Is that a shameless plug? Oh, you bet it is. Or if you're worried about spoilers because you're about to jump into God of War 3 and you haven't played the other two, don't worry about it. The beginning of the game actually has this really good video that explains in a concise way exactly what's happened and led to this point. So anyway, back to the beginning of the game. You're on the back of GAIA, the mother of Titans, and you're scaling up Mount Olympus to get to Zeus and the other gods so that you can kill them. Without spoiling too much of this section, because it is fantastic and I think you should play it for yourself, it doesn't go very well. You end up in hell, and Kratos is swimming around in the river Styx. If you know what the river Styx is, it's not very good. Whilst you're in this river, you end up losing all of your powers and your abilities. Your health bar shrinks, your magic bar shrinks, and your item bar shrinks as well. I have to say, I don't like it when games do this, especially sequels, because they build you all the way up in the previous game, give you all of these new powers and abilities just to strip them away from you in the next one, because you have to have something to strive towards. I get why they do it, but it's not great. However, this is a very minor inconvenience in what is otherwise an absolutely fantastic game. Whilst you're in hell, you meet HEPHAESTUS. He's the blacksmith god, and he tells you that you need to find the flame of Olympus to get the power to kill gods. Now, this is a very, very familiar plot. It's almost exactly the same as the first game. However, it does stuff in a new way. I don't know if it's the environments, or the enemies that you encounter, or the way that story unfolds, but there's something about it that feels fresh, and it's a welcome change. Let's talk about the presentation of this game as well for a minute, because this game is absolutely stunning. It's got absolutely astounding levels of detail in every corner of it, and it really makes you feel like you're there. The other games were pretty good, especially for their time, but even now, I know this is a remaster on the PlayStation 4, but this is really something special and actually stands together with some of the more current games at the moment. The camera work as well is especially improved. Before it would really hinder any sort of experience you have with platforming, but this time around it aids in every single way, more than just platforming as well. The action feels incredibly visceral as the camera shakes with every movement. Sometimes it makes it a little bit hard to actually see what's going on, but that's a really minor complaint because it does more good than it does harm. The UI is way cleaner this time around as well. Upgrades are way quicker to process and you know where everything's going to appear on the screen. These are all minor changes, but it's very intuitive design and it makes everything way more pleasant to interact with. The music this time around is also pretty great. It feels pretty similar to the other games, however, because of the aid in the camera movement, it really makes everything feel incredibly cinematic. The music really swells at just the right moments, and for some reason it feels better than it ever has before. Now, let's talk about the gameplay. If you've ever seen my previous reviews, you'll know that this is where I struggle with this game a bit. The gameplay is always solid, but it does these silly little things here and there that make me really hate it at some points. This game never once did that at any point. Every single aspect of this game is perfectly balanced now. At any point in the game, any given moment, any fight, any puzzle solving, any platforming, if I failed, I knew it was my fault. I knew that I did something wrong and it wasn't the game. And I can't say that about the other games. This is a true perfection of balance for the hack and slash genre that God of War is trying to take from. I know that a lot of people say that God of War is a very simplified and dumbed down hack and slash game, but you cannot deny that what it does very well, especially after playing this game. The fighting in this game is the best it has ever been by far. Every single part of this gameplay feels super fluid. There's even a long range grapple attack this time. So even if you're rolling out the way and you're just a little bit out of reach and you can't follow up the combo, you can just do a long range grapple and you get straight back into the combat. It really helps keep your combos going. I found this time around I was getting way more consistent and higher combos. It is a little bit more forgiving, you have a little bit more time to actually keep the combo going, but it doesn't ever feel like it's kind of trying to hold your hand, you know? It's so good. There's even transitional attacks for the weapons. You just press a couple of buttons and you switch between weapons with an attack, rather than the clunky method that was used in God of War 2 where you'd have to go into the menus and switch between the two. Even if you lose a combo, you still feel like you're accomplished. The combat is so fluid. I know I'm saying that a lot, but I can't get the point across to you enough. It's so fantastic. It feels like every single second is visceral. It feels like you're making a dent in a fight every single moment. Speaking of the weapons are fantastic this time around. You get 4 of them. One of them is your main Blades of Chaos. I won't say what the other ones are because just saying their names are a little bit spoilery. But I will say, each of them is developed in a fantastic way. They all feel like worthy additions to your arsenal. I often felt like I was neglecting some of them, so I actually switched over to them. Some of them I just really wanted to get back to, even though it wasn't the kind of weapon that I should have been using for the actual fight at hand. That's a true mark of great weapon design in a game. The Rage mechanic is back this time, and it's pretty much the same as the other two. This one's called Rage of Sparta. It lets you use the Blade of Olympus for a short amount of time. You can go in and out whenever you want. You don't take any damage this time, but it does feel like it's less impactful. It is a good way to kind of get you out of tight spots, especially because you don't actually lose any health, but it's still a mechanic that I was happy to see return anyway. The game does a fantastic thing where it makes sure that you're using your entire arsenal on a regular basis. Some of these weapons are even used for puzzle solving. Some of them do higher damage or they're like heavier attacks, so you use them to break down certain areas. And some of your items, like a bow, I won't tell you who gives you the bow, but the bow is good for like setting fire to stuff. This is just good gameplay design. I know I'm really kind of sniffing its butt a little bit, but I can't tell you enough how excited I am to be super happy with the way that this game turned out, especially being soured after the last one. There's also a pretty decent variety of enemies this time around as well. Most of them call back from the first God of War game. There's a few new additions in there as well, and they're welcome. But, I gotta be honest, I think if you just had exactly the same enemies as the first game and did a graphical update this great, I would've been fine with it anyway. Everything looks so crisp in this game. It just feels new. The bosses in this game are awesome as well. I mean, some of them aren't really even boss fights, they're just like weird little mini games, but it's fun. It's a fun cinematic piece to go along with. Some of the bosses, you don't even really fight them. You kind of just hit them a little bit and then you get a cutscene. But you've had like a long chase scene before that. So it doesn't matter. It feels like everything is built up in a nice way. The final boss fight especially is an absolutely monumental improvement over the last game. It's so good. I'll talk about it more in the spoiler section. But this is a really great improvement, and I'm so glad that they chose to do it this way. The puzzles and platforming is back again, as they are in every God of War game, but the puzzles in this game, they're light, but they're pretty fun. Like in the other games, none of them are actual head scratchers, ever, but they're fun to do, so I don't have any complaints about them. One puzzle plays with perspective towards the end of the game, and I gotta say, it must have been a real arse ache to design. It's really great. The platforming in the game is actually fun for the first time. Some of the platforming and puzzles are blended together in a pretty nice way, and even if I failed them, I wasn't ever angry about it. Some of the puzzles and platforming are even mixed into fights. There's one when you're in a labyrinth and the room is rotating and you have to avoid spikes on the ground. All around, the puzzles and platforming are actually pretty fantastic. And once again, the chests are back just as they are in the last two as well. And I feel like they're even better this time, because you actually have to use items in your arsenal to figure out where some of them are. I won't say the name of the item, but there's an item that lets you shine light on things. And there's gold dust hidden around various parts of the world, and you shine the light and it reveals chests and hidden doors and passages. It's awesome. This is great. It makes me really feel like I want to explore the world that they've given me. The quick time events are also the best that they've ever been in the series. This time around, they're laid out really well. Each section of the screen is designated to a certain button. So instead of having to wait for the button to appear on the screen and focus on that, instead, this time you can focus on the action at hand. So all you have to do is use your peripheral vision and see what's in the corner of your eye. It's awesome. And they're used in exactly the right place as well. There's very few times in this game where I thought, you know what, this would be better off as gameplay. Because some of these QuickTime events are seriously awesome to look at. They're a pleasure to be a part of. And when you've completed the game, there's still plenty to do. Not only do you unlock a new difficulty just as you do in the other games, but there's also challenge modes that you can take part in as well. And a lot of them are pretty fun. Stupidly hard, but they're fun. They're sure to keep you entertained for hours at a time at least. When you're playing through the game as well, you can also find items to be used on your next playthrough, which can be used to grant you special abilities whilst you're playing through the story mode. The story that's presented within God of War 3 is actually pretty great as well, despite the fact that it feels completely familiar and almost exactly the same as the first game upon its premise. As you go through the game, it's clear that the way that this is presented is a very new game. This game actually feels far more focused than the last two ever did. It develops its characters more, and to be honest, it turns into some sort of a family drama by the end of it, and it's actually a pleasure to watch unfold. The other characters in the game actually allow Kratos to develop as well, even though it's in minor ways. You see the effect that he's had on these people, and you see the effect it has on him. There's little minor nuances in the way that his face cringes when he talks to people that shows that he's actually kind of remorseful for some of the stuff that he's done. And whilst it's not part of the main story, there's still these notes that are left around in certain sections of the game. It's clearly a story that the game didn't have time to tell, so it left it up to the player. I think it was a good decision, because for the most part it's actually pretty fun to follow. Okay, so now we're in the spoiler section. So if you still want to play God of War 3 for yourself, which I would highly recommend you to do so, this is your last chance to leave. First bit of spoilers I want to talk about are the boss fights. Mostly the most notable ones. Some of them aren't even boss fights, they're just encounters with gods that you would consider to be a boss in the game. First boss fight I want to talk about is the Hades boss fight. It's a simple concept, the stage changes as you go along, and when you get to the final stage you have to swing around him using your grappling capabilities to catch him off guard. Like I said, it's simple, but it's effective. It's fun gameplay. Next one I want to talk about is Helios and Hermes. Both of these aren't even boss fights. With Helios, you just shoot him out of the sky, and you walk up to him, and you rip his head off. His head is that item I was talking about earlier that lets you highlight specific places in the environment that would maybe hide a chest or be a different pathway to another area. The Hermes one is pretty much just a chase scene, which is also fun to take part in, and when you finally find Hermes, you don't fight him because he's too injured, and all you have to do is just kind of trip him up for a little bit, and then, because you want his boots so you can run super fast, you don't wait for him to die and rip him off of his legs, you just pick him up and cut his damn legs off. It's brutal, but it's cool to look at. His boots are also good, not only for platforming and moving around the environment, because now you can run up walls and run along walls, but they're good for fighting as well. During a fight, you can charge up the boots, run at an enemy, knock him into the air, and then start juggling them whilst you're up there. It feels really great. Another boss fight I want to talk about is the Hercules boss fight, and to me, this is one of the best ones in the game. It's not like a massive feat of gameplay design, but it's cool just in the sense that it shows some sort of sibling rivalry, because Hercules is Kratos' half-brother. And Kratos even looks at him in this certain way where he's like, you know what, we don't have to fight. I don't like Zeus, you don't like Zeus, we can just leave this and move on. But Hercules is so sour because Kratos is almost seen as the favoured child in his eyes, because Zeus puts more attention into him than he does Hercules. But the boss fight itself is actually pretty good. Whilst it's kind of standard in the mechanics it uses, the actual finale of it is really great, because his mother is watching from the stands whilst you pound his face in with his own weapons. These weapons, by the way, Kratos gets to keep. They're named the Nemean Cestus, which I believe Hercules gained from killing this mystical lion. They're like a boxing glove type weapon. It's good to see Kratos trying to attack enemies with some kind of viciousness. It's almost like he's using his bare hands when he uses these things. Another boss, if you could even call it that, is Hephaestus. It's not really a boss, but Hephaestus tries to trick Kratos when he makes him the Nemesis Whip. The Nemesis Whip is this awesome weapon. It's like an electrical thing. It's pretty similar to maybe the Blades of Exile that you get to use in the game. It has more of an emphasis on juggling enemies and doing like really quick combat. But the reason that you fight him is because Pandora is actually involved in this game. Turns out Pandora is Hephaestus' daughter in some ways. Hephaestus crafts Pandora's box, which is what lives inside the flame of Olympus. That's now your ultimate goal. And the only thing that can open that is Pandora. When Hephaestus was making Pandora's box, he went to the flame of Olympus to try and craft a key for it. That was the only thing that was left. And it turns out the flame spat out Pandora. Apparently she is the ultimate form of a key. The Hephaestus boss fight for me was kind of sour. Not because it's bad, it's actually pretty cool. However, he's just a sad man. The only reason he's down in hell in the first place is because of the events of the first game. Because you managed to best the Temple of Pandora, Zeus comes to find Hephaestus and beats the crap out of him and puts him in hell. Hephaestus is just waiting here without his daughter, his surrogate daughter I guess, and without his wife Aphrodite, who he so desperately wants to see, and there's a portal to Aphrodite, but she never comes through it to come and visit him. It's just a sad situation. And then to top it all off, without the fact that you might have to sacrifice his daughter, you also bang his wife. I mean, you don't have to bang his wife, but yes, it's a minigame and I chose to bang her. Sue me! And whilst we're on the subject of Pandora, I actually want to talk about it for a second. Pandora is actually a pretty welcome addition to the game. She's not some damsel in distress that you have to look after all the time. Yeah, there is a certain section where you have to save her, but she doesn't have a health bar or anything like that. She's never a nuisance. And she brings out the softer side of Kratos. Considering that this man is such a monster, to see him actually kind of show some sort of empathy towards this young girl, because she clearly reminds him of his daughter Calliope. It's nice. It's a nice bit of development for Kratos. It's the only real bit of development we've had for him throughout the entire series. We see his sadness and the fact that he wants to commit suicide because he hates his life, he hates that he's stuck in this cycle. But this is really something different. This is a softer side to him. Not a more vulnerable side, but softer. But this also kind of helps empathize why Kratos is such a scumbag at the same time. When you save Pandora and you're trying to take her towards the flame of Olympus, because you're still trying to wrestle with the idea of maybe sacrificing her. In the back of every player's mind, he's just killed Hephaestus. Her dad. Whether it's a biological dad or not, she most definitely sees Hephaestus as her father. And knowing this information, even having slight feelings for Pandora before Hephaestus tries to betray you, you still murder him. What a scumbag! Like I said, it's nice to see a softer side. It's nice to see a different side of Kratos. However, in the back of my head, I'm still thinking, this guy sucks. When you finally get to the Flame of Olympus, this is where some real conflict emerges within Kratos. Because he so desperately wants to kill his dad. He so desperately wants Zeus to die in the most painful way possible. But now, he doesn't want to sacrifice Pandora. He wants to find another way. But Pandora is now so hell-bent on sacrificing herself for the greater good. She believes that this is her purpose. And what becomes quite sad is that now that she's so hell-bent on it, Kratos doesn't want it at all. He really doesn't want it. He wants to save her. He wants Pandora to be his second chance, his redemption. And when it comes down to it, Pandora decides to try and jump into the flame. But Kratos catches her because he just can't bear the thought of losing another daughter-like figure. But Zeus is in the background and he's egging Kratos on. Don't fail her like you failed everything else. Don't fail. Just don't fail again. Kratos gets super mad, probably the most angry we've ever seen him in the entire series, with this face that is, quite frankly, meme-worthy. However, it's good in the moment. And Kratos lets go of Pandora, forgets about everything for just a moment. He doesn't care. All he wants is to eviscerate Zeus. It's a sad moment, but it's a good moment. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, what are you doing? Don't let her go. However, I also want to crush Zeus's head as well. It's a really good moment where I'm kind of in the same mindset of Kratos. But then, after the explosion, Pandora's obviously gone, she's dead, and Zeus is knocked out. But when Kratos wakes up, he goes to open up Pandora's box. When he opens it, he realizes there's nothing inside it. Zeus then sees that there's nothing inside it, and mocks him for it. And this is when we engage in the second part of Zeus's boss fight. Speaking of Zeus's boss fight, let's talk about that for a second. Because if you ever saw my review for the last game, you'll know I was a bit disappointed with the final boss fight with Zeus at the end of the game. This one, however, is leaps and bounds ahead of that one. This one is so fantastic. It's such a spectacle to play. Every single moment feels awesome. The first part of the boss fight is awesome. It's almost like a 2D side-scroller. You're just beating the crap out of Zeus and Zeus is beating the crap out of you. The second part, you head outside, and then Gaia comes to interrupt. The next part, you're beating the crap out of each other inside Gaia next to her own heart. Then, you're both trying to drain life from Gaia. Zeus doing it to fill his own life, and you doing it to kind of kill Gaia at the same time. Because, oh yeah, Gaia betrays you in the beginning of the game and says, you're just a pawn. I didn't need you at this point. You can leave now. So then, you kill Gaia and Zeus at the same time. But, turns out, Zeus ain't dead. He comes back to life using what I can only guess is the manifestation of rage that he still has for Kratos. He then drains the life from Kratos, and you end up in this weird area. You're in the dark, and you're trying to find your way out. The whole thing ends up to be this massive metaphor for forgiving yourself and learning to move on, as Pandora and his wife and child are big parts of this. He's trying to find them again. He's trying to reconnect with them. It's a way for him to learn to move on with his life. So when you get to the end of this section and you learn to forgive yourself, you come back to life, and you force Zeus's spirit back into his body. Then, you beat the crap out of Zeus. Now, I've said beat the crap out of quite a few times. I've said eviscerate once. But you absolutely destroy him. You remove him from all living life on Earth. You tap circle until you don't want to tap it anymore. It covers the screen in blood, and I gotta be honest, I probably tapped this button for about a minute and a half before I realised this ain't ever gonna stop. I could do this for the rest of my life. So, I finally stop. Zeus is dead. End of the boss fight. At this point, Athena shows up to come and congratulate Kratos on his victory. Oh yeah, she's not dead. She comes back in some kind of astral form and she gives you the Blades of Exile. You know, the third iteration of the Blades of Chaos. Anyway, doesn't matter. Getting back to it. She says, well done. That was a little bit savage at the end there, but I like your style. Then she asks for her powers back. Because she was the one that put all of that power inside the Pandora's box. But Kratos is like, there's nothing inside it. I can't give you what I don't have. But she persists and said, I put the most powerful weapon ever inside that box. I want it back. And it turns out, when you opened it up in the first game, you let loose all of this fear and this hatred and this distrust, but also hope. And it turns out, Zeus got all the bad stuff, which is why everybody thought he was in decline and he started to get a bit paranoid. But Kratos got hope. That's right, boys and girls. If you just hope a little bit too hard, you might turn into a giant. But it's at this point we get some truly fantastic development from Kratos. It's not the end of an arc, it's an absolute spike straight through the clouds. And Kratos is like, you know what? Remember that time that you forced me to be the god of war and commit terrible atrocities for all eternity when I tried to kill myself because I couldn't bear to look at myself anymore? Yeah, I didn't like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up this massive great sword next to me and I'm going to thrust it through my midriff. Because I cannot bear to give you anything. But it turns out the true intention of doing this is not only just to kill Kratos, but it's to release the hope that was within him. The hope that he released after going through that dark stage and learning to forgive himself. This hope is now spread out amongst the entire world. Athena's obviously not happy because she was hoping to be able to take this blank slate, this absolute destruction that you've created, and start from scratch and create the world in her image. But Kratos decides to kill two birds with one stone, finally kill himself, and make the world a better place. And then it's fade to black. Then you gotta watch loads of credits, which I'm usually fine with, but this is two games, remember, it's the original one and the remaster, so you gotta watch plenty of people's names scroll by. So, my concluding thoughts on God of War 3 Remastered are that it is absolutely 100% fan-tabby-dozy. I would, of course, recommend that you play this game yourself. I do not care that a brand new game is coming out, so if you're just saying, you know what, I'll just play that one instead. Spend your money on this game. Or alternatively, if you can't afford that, that's fine. I understand. I won't judge you. However, I do recommend if you ever get the chance, definitely play this game. The combat is the best that it's ever been, and it's fun every single moment. The bosses in the game are truly inventive at certain points and really makes me want to continue throughout the game, and the story is great. Despite being a little bit of a rehash of the last three games, there are certain moments in there that make it feel brand new. On the whole, it's a great experience that I'm very glad to have had. Well then, boys and girls, that's going to about do it for this video. Thank you very much for sticking with it all the way until the end. That's been my review for God of War 3 Remastered. I do hope you enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun making it. I imagine this one was quite long, so again, thank you for sticking in there. If you liked it, make sure you leave a like. If you didn't, that's fine too. Leave a dislike. Leave a comment. Let me know how I can improve, because all I want to do is make better content for you guys. Also, if you find that you might like this kind of content, if you like reviews and possible analysis in the future, definitely click the subscribe button. I'm going to be doing a video at least twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you one last time for sticking in there with me. I'll see you in the next one.